right, our next guest is Candace Gorham. She's the author of a book on death, dying, and disbelief. She's a snappy dresser and a snazzy dancer. Candace, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Large applause, large applause. We spare no expense. Candace, we'll be talking about your book for sure here, but before that, how about you give us a quick bio as to who Candace Gorham is?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so if I'm giving sort of like the religious background story, I was raised Jehovah's Witness until I was like maybe 9, 10 years old when my parents split up. And but even at that young age, like I was super serious about my religious beliefs. And so like as a 9, 10-year-old, I was choosing to continue to study with the Jehovah's Witnesses, even though like my mama didn't make us go and like nobody else in our family went. And then I got to middle school and I started going to like the family church, which was the United Methodist Church. And I got confirmed in the United Methodist Church and, you know, baptized and sang in the choir and did all that, you know, the youth choir. Then I got to high school, got a little boyfriend, you know, wasn't really trying to hear all that anymore. So I kind of, you know, fell out of church for a little bit. And then when things really started going crazy was my sister married a minister when I was my senior year of high school. And he was of the more extreme variety. Technically, he was non-denominational, but he was like, you know, the sort of stuff you think about, like Pentecostal holiness, evangelical, you know, casting out demons and fasting and praying in tongues and prophesying and all of that. And I was ordained in that church under him as a prophetess and an evangelist. And so I'll just put it out there now. I still prophesy for a small fee. I got you. Whatever you need to happen, I'll make happen. I'll give you a little prophecy, small fee. And I'll cast out a demon too. I'll cast out a demon too if we need to do that too. Just let me know what that costs a little bit extra, but it's not easy to do.
I thought I had a demon. It was just
lucrative.
Yeah.
So I did that for a couple of years with that church, and where I was able to sort of begin to, you know, deconvert my deconversion process was actually I moved to Bermuda to teach in Bermuda for a couple of years, and that really got me away from everybody and all the influences and all the things that were going on in my life, you know, like religious influences and stuff. And I was going through a lot of things at that time, and I was feeling like, you know, I think I'm doing everything according to the Bible, right? I'm fasting, I'm praying, I'm paying my tithes, 10% off gross, everything, you know, like for real. But stuff was going wrong in my life. There was a bunch of mess. And so I'm thinking I must be doing something wrong, right? I'm trying all my hardest here. And if my life is a mess, then something's wrong with me. And so it's always been really important for me to sort of make sure that when I tell my deconversion story, that I want it to be clear that I did not deconvert out of no kind of like emotional trauma or angry at God or anything like that. But I felt like I must be doing something wrong. Let me study some more. Let me do some more research. Let me sort of open my thoughts up to things that I had never considered before, because I'm obviously doing something wrong. Well, as you might imagine, I pretty much studied myself right on out of religion. Doing that, you know, started looking at stuff a little bit too closely, you know, comparing other religions and that sort of thing. And like I said, by being in Bermuda, it was easy. It was an easy process for me because I didn't have all the family around me, like trying to convince me to go to church and stuff like that. I mean, it wasn't an easy process. It was traumatic. Like I used to have nightmares that I was going to hell, and you know, it was really scary for, you know, the first couple of years of me coming out of religion. But, you know, here I am today, like, fuck religion.
I hate to bring it to you, Candace, but hell is actually just one long recording of Left at the Valley. That's what it is. You're in it right now. So you can tolerate this, you'll be all right. I gotta ask, you know, coming from a black family, they're very, very tight on religion. So for you to deconvert, I mean, was there a lot of backlash from the rest of your family?
Well, like I said, in the beginning, I was not around my family, so I was able to do all of that questioning and reconsidering and stuff outside of their influence. And so by the time I moved back to the United States, I was pretty settled in my convictions. But the problem was that I was not out to my family. And so actually my first book, the Ebony Exodus Project, is pretty much how I came out to my family. Was like, there's a book now where I talk all about my religious experiences. And, but I didn't really, like go sit my mama down and go sit my daddy down and say, hey, I'm an atheist now. It was just more like something that kind of evolved. And like I said, when my first book came out, plenty of family found out about it through that, or me posting on Facebook talking about the book and stuff like that. So I lost some friends. I did lose a couple friends. I had quite a bit of issues with some family members. I kind of get looks and stares at the family reunion. People maybe give me the little cold shoulder. So it's definitely had some ripple effects in my family. But with my immediate family, mama, daddy, brother, sister, in-laws, nieces and nephews, like my immediate core people, and my best friend, who's been my best friend for over 30 years, my core people are like, whatever, they either don't talk about it at all, or they're like, it's cool, it's whatever, so it's worked out pretty well in that way.
I've always said that, when you're a child, family means blood. But as you grow older and older, family are the people that have your back. And that's
definitely
a relation. So good for you. And of course, you have new friends.
New friends.
Real quick, I want to ask.
Yeah, go for it, Brent.
Do you think that that was a better way, that was a better tactic than the just letting it happen naturally, like instead of like actually having that conversation with each family member or each people that you're within your family that you're close with? Do you think that was like a better way to do it? Just like kind of let it come up when it comes up, sort of thing?
I don't like confrontation, so it was good for me. Okay. I didn't have to get into any arguments or anything. Like I said, I understand that to a certain extent. I'm probably lucky that, my family was just sort of like, moderately spiritual, religious as it is. Probably the most religious person in my family is my mama. And when she found out, she broke down crying and was all pitiful and stuff like that. So she had the hardest reaction. But like I said, everybody else is just, they just sort of like put two and two together by things that I posted on Facebook and little snarky comments I would make. And so everybody's pushed. And then, like I said, now I got the book out and stuff. So I feel like it was good.
All out
for
there
me.
Now, right?
Yeah,
It's all done.
yeah, exactly.
And I gotta say, cool. Ebony Exodus for a title for a book, that's fantastic. I love it a whole lot.
That's really cool. I really like that.
I love it. But today we were talking about on death, dying, and disbelief. So I guess my first question is, sounds pretty obvious, but what is the book really about?
So the book consists of 10 tips that I feel people who are grieving, if you can take into consideration these 10 tips and you put some of them into action, that will help your grieving process, help move it along. And the reason that I wrote the book was in 2019, that high school sweetheart that I mentioned a couple minutes ago, he died in a car accident. And so that was me. He and I had reconnected, later in life. We both went through marriages and divorces and children and blah, 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 blah. And we reconnected years later. And so it was pretty traumatic for me. And so the first year was just horrible and terrible. And when the 1 year anniversary came around, the grief just came back and hit me like a tsunami. And so I thought, I can't do another year of this. Like, I can't go through another year of this. Like, what can I do to sort of channel this energy? And that's what I was like, I can talk about. I mean, I'm a licensed professional counselor, so I can combine what I know about my personal experience, what I know from my professional expertise, and, and so it's specifically speaking to non-believers, atheists, agnostics, because when you think about death and dying and heaven and hell, like that's always sort of relegated to the realm of like religion, right? Like you got to talk about where they're going after they die and what's going to happen to their energy or whatever, right? And so it tends to be in the realm of the spiritual. Well, we as non-believers don't really have any resources, right? Like, what are we going to do? And so that's what it is. It's sort of intended to be a resource for grieving non-believers.
It's very apropos you mentioned that, because just before you came on the show, we were reminiscing about a co-host that we used to have the show that passed away, and today yesterday was her birthday. So I guess I can totally understand how you did work your energy into a book. We worked our energy into listening to an old clip of her. So I totally understand.
Yeah.
Do you feel that as atheists that we handle death properly?
Do atheists handle death properly? I think that there's a combination of what goes on. I think that on the one hand, we handle it. A lot of times people sort of go into it like, this is the end. I'm not going to hold on to any false beliefs that I'm going to reconnect with that person. This is the end, and I accept that and I understand that. The other side of that is, but I want there to be an afterlife. I want that person to be available to me when I die too. And so there's that becomes sort of the existential crisis, and the existential struggle is in not necessarily that I believe that there's an afterlife, but now I want to believe that there's an afterlife. And so then you go through, oh my God, am I turning back into a religious person? I don't want to be a religious person, but I do want there to be a heaven, so then we sort of have a really unique internal struggle, I think, and that's, what I see a lot and what I've heard a lot and what my personal experience was.
Yeah, I mean, that almost seems like that for so many of the beliefs that, religion is kind of put out there. It's like, it always seems like it's stuff that you'd like to think is true. You want to believe the people that you don't like are going to a bad place, and the people that you do like are going to be hanging out with you. You know what I mean? Like that's,
yeah.
And they say you're like, I think it was something like 5 to 7 times more likely to believe to accept a proposition if it's something you want to believe is true.
Right.
And so it's all, I don't know, but that almost makes it seem like it's less likely to actually be true, right? Because we're just thinking it's something that we'd like to believe. Like, yeah, you get to go to a theme park when you die, man. It's awesome. Like,
Oh yeah, Kevin was telling me that the cat lady, whatever, I had never heard of her before, but she said heaven's got like lava surfing or something. I was like, damn, like I'm trying to go lava surfing. I don't know, like forget seeing all my friends and family. I want to go lava surfing.
Yeah, and the cows mow the lawn.
Oh,
but in tractors, like they're driving them and stuff,
She also mentioned one time there was also a warehouse of body parts somewhere. So if you get an amputee who needs an arm or a leg, it's right there.
They got it. Wow,
Yeah,
she went all the way out to left field.
But are they like normal arms or like cool arms that can do stuff? Like
okay,
got a laser in it,
right? Like, do they have like technology in them, bionic arms?
Right.
I'll take one.
Like the Winter Soldier, has got his arm.
Also, if you're missing an arm, you don't necessarily have. Like, I wouldn't have to necessarily take a Caucasian arm. I can take a black man's arm or an Asian arm. That'd be cool, actually. Change the color pattern, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Kevin the mismatched man.
Yeah, I want go gadget arms. I'm good with that.
Right? I just want lasers.
Left turn as usual.
Yeah, exactly. So Candace, do you feel that as opposed to when you were a believer, do you feel that your belief system now or I shouldn't even call it a belief system now, the way you face death as a non-believer. I mean, it's not as reassuring, but it's a more mature way to look at passing. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a really significant loss when I was my senior year in high school. Actually, my aunt, who was like a second mom to me, she died suddenly from an aneurysm. And so, of course, at that time, I was, I was getting involved in the church with my sister and her husband and stuff. And so I was getting pretty serious about my religious beliefs. And I know that I mourned her death completely different from how I mourned my high school sweetheart's death, because for her death, a lot of it was like pushing down the grief, trying to hide it, because she's in a better place, like she's in a better place. Like I should not be pitiful and depressed and sad about this. And so there was a lot of putting it down. There was a lot of hiding. There was a lot of, just not really talking about it, not really letting myself experience it. Versus, now when he died 2 years ago, it's nothing for me to pretend like, there's no better place. There's no reason for me to pretend and hide from God. Oh, I'm actually depressed about this thing. Like, no. Heck no, I'm depressed. This is pitiful. I'm miserable, y'all. I need everybody to know how miserable I am. So I would say that I grieve both of them two, completely different ways, because I was no longer a believer.
It's always something that's fascinating me, because I was raised Catholic, and when I was Catholic and I was a believer as a child, when somebody would die, it was always like, why are you guys crying? I mean, Uncle Bob's in a better place now. He's just waiting for us. We'll see him soon eventually.
Yep.
So why are you guys crying? So which
It's a
leads
long
me
vacation.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yep.
So if somebody goes on a vacation for a couple of months, you don't cry because they leave. They'll be back.
Yep.
Exactly.
So it leads me to believe, and to this day I still hold that belief, that I don't actually think that even believers believe in the afterlife. I think they tell themselves that, they hope for it, but I don't think they truly believe in it. Because your reaction towards death would be completely different if you actually believed it.
Because of
Or
the
if you knew
selfish
it.
aspect of it. I mean, people are inherently selfish, and so the grieving process is also about how you're feeling. You're sad because you don't have what you want anymore, what made you happy, or it's more about yourself.
Yeah, funerals aren't for the person who passed away; they're for the people that are still left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Let's ask the expert.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
See what Candace has to say.
Right. Don't ask
What do
me.
you mean, maybe?
No.
Kevin?
No, I mean, I would say when I was super religious, in my super religious time, I really did believe that there was a heaven and a hell. I mean, I was terrified about hell. I think, you're making me question. I think that, obviously you have it's a subjective trying to look back at, reflect on yourself sort of thing. So I believe that I really did believe it. But I think, like Sabrina was saying, that's a good point, that it's not necessarily about where that person is as it's so much as it is about I'm missing that person right now here on earth. And but the problem is that a lot of times believers try to hide that grief, behind the idea that, they're in heaven. So, it's okay. Don't worry about it. And that's where I think that's the most unhealthy thing to me, is trying to hide it and bury the grief.
Would you feel that, if we were to find a way to not bury the grief, it seems that most people are not willing to take that bargain because it comes at the price of hope. You lose your hope because all of a sudden you're dealing with death in a much more mature way, but yet, you're kind of losing the hope of seeing that person again. Ironically enough, I was much more sad when people died when I was a believer than when my own father passed away about 6 years ago as a non-believer. I was much more at peace with his passing. So it's I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, again, like I said, I think that it is a distinct difference because your whole worldview is completely different. yeah, I think that so part of what I do in the book is, like I was saying, it's 10 tips, right? And one of the tips that I talk about is like doing something in honor of that person, right? To try to memorialize their, you just do something in their honor that's gonna help you feel better. And I think, trying to shift that attention, trying to help non-believers sort of shift their attention away from just plain and simple, the person's no longer here. Okay, well, how do we make meaning though? Let's make our own meaning in life. And, whereas believers don't have to go through that process. They don't have to make meaning because the meaning is already prescribed to them. God took them on to a better place. Whereas we have to struggle with it and find some kind of way to come to peace with it. And like I said, some people are more at peace because maybe I could imagine somebody being more at peace if you're not burdened by the heaven or hell beliefs, because I know when again another family member committed suicide, and according to you can't kill, right? You can't kill. So a person who commits suicide is supposed to go to hell because you can't kill and you killed yourself. Well, I remember being at that funeral and just being like, y'all like straight preaching this woman into heaven, and like, it was all kind of stuff was wrong with her life. Like we knew she was all over the place. Like, is she really in heaven? And so I think an additional struggle maybe that falls on the believer side is worrying about, is my loved one in heaven or hell? And so it might be easier for a non-believer in that sense, that not only I don't have to worry about heaven, but I also don't have to worry about hell, which is a good thing, whereas like I said, when I was much younger and that family member committed suicide, it was like, like I said, I was much younger. And so I'm sitting here like, wait, I thought, somebody committed suicide would go to hell. And, some of the other things about her life, that were going on in her life, I was like, I thought this person would be in hell, but y'all just preached her right into heaven. And that's a scary thought, right? Like, nobody wants to stand up and tell a parent who's burying their child that their child has gone to hell because such and such and such, even though, their lifestyle may not have lined up with what's supposed to get you into heaven. But that's like a secret internal struggle now that all the family is going through this internal struggle about, is this person in heaven or hell?
It sounds like it complicates the hell out of everything.
Yeah.
Right? It just makes it that much harder, because now we're like, but we knew they were sleeping with, somebody that wasn't their husband or wife. So, I mean, we can talk about that, and then everybody's kind of got to deal with that in the seat on their own, where they stand on where they think they are in the afterlife. That just is like a mind fuck that just seems unnecessary. And
I think Benjamin made the point earlier on, and he has a very good point, that it really depends on how much you like the person or not. I mean,
that's true. No, for real.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you think the person's a bit of an idiot, then, he's definitely in hell. But he's had his fault, but he's a good person at heart. He's in heaven. So the rules are very.
So it's like you're sending them one place or another. More like each of us.
Basically.
Maybe we decide. I mean, if we're going to make up rules, then let's make up rules.
Right. So the person basically the person's soul splits into like 50 pieces, and like where each of those people believe they are, that bit of their soul. So like Benjamin believes they're in hell, so a piece of their soul went to hell, but I believe they're in heaven, so a piece of their soul went to heaven. I like that. I like that strategy.
Let's do that. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense with Cat Kerr's arm factory warehouse.
That's where they get the body part. Exactly.
Shatters.
Benjamin's in heaven, but he's missing an arm because he was partly bad. Now he needs a replacement.
Right.
But then we really need to figure out where the head is, because I feel like that matters the most. But
he solved Christianity.
Oh, you guys are wonderful.
Aside you got your 10 tips there. What are the other tips you'd like to give people that grieve or in the process of grieving?
Well, my favorite one out of all of them is like spending time in nature. So one of the things that I do in the book, I'm not just talking off the top of my head. I also incorporate a lot of research. And so in the chapter about spending time in nature, I talk about stuff called directed attention fatigue, and I talk about like the neurological research that behind, you know, how stress impairs our decision making, and how spending time in nature, you know, helps you those things recover. And so I spend quite a bit of time, you know, like I said, looking at research and looking at science to sort of bolster the points that I'm making. And spending time in nature is absolutely my favorite tip of them all. You know, anybody who knows me knows that I'm an avid hiker. I go to Colorado every summer and do 14,000 foot mountains. I came from 6,300 feet today. That's why I texted and was like, "Are we gonna be on camera?" Because I was in the mountains.
You look fabulous.
I was in the mountains this morning hiking, and I got up to 6,300 feet, couldn't breathe. And so that I you know, take it very seriously. But I make a point in the book, you know, like you don't have to be a hiker to get the benefits of spending time in nature. It could be, you know, working in a garden. It could be just sitting on your porch during a rainstorm. You know, it could be any variety, just as long as you get out of the sort of hustle and bustle of the daily life and just sort of put yourself back into a natural setting. That will help a lot of those things recover. And so that's probably my favorite tip out of all of them. Go ahead.
No, I was about to say, you went and got high just before coming on the show.
Yes. High on a mountain. Yes.
Pretty high.
High on life.
Low oxygen all the time.
Mountains, that new shit, man. Mountains, that
you know what I'm saying? You ain't heard of that strain yet, the mountain strain.
Shit stank.
Fantastic.
I guess more questions I gotta ask about this is there a way? I mean, how was your book received according to denomination, or maybe between believers and non-believers? I mean, do you know how the book was received for like the faithful, how they viewed your book? Were they agreeing with it or not?
It actually has not been released yet. It was yesterday, October 2nd was supposed to be the release date, but I was informed that we have a paper shortage in this country.
Oh wow.
My release date got pushed from October 2nd to October 21st. So it has not come out yet.
No, I have to wait. Is there an ebook?
Yeah.
I don't know if they're releasing the ebook early. It will be in e-format, but I don't think they're releasing it early.
Oh.
And hopefully there'll be an audible format as well.
I've got to work on that. That is the goal.
Right.
That is the goal. Yes.
That always takes a bit longer, you know.
Yeah.
You got to read it. You got to read it properly.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And I did the audio on my first book, the Ebony Exodus Project, and I was married at the time, and my husband was a studio engineer. So how lucky was I, right?
There you go.
But now I don't have a spouse to engineer my audio anymore, so I have no idea how I'm going to do it.
Oh, yeah. How did you like doing that? Was that an interesting?
Oh my God, it was so hard. No, I hated it. Yes, I hated it.
Hard when I listen because I'm dyslexic, so I have a hard time reading a lot of books. But so I listen to them, and it sounds tough. You know, like it sounds like you can hear especially a lot of times when it's somebody else reading the book, because you can tell their inflection's not right, sometimes, so that's why I actually like it better when, the actual authors like read the books, because they know what they're trying to, like the way they're trying to say something. Right.
Exactly.
So, yeah. That's
cool. My thing. I'm like, I don't want to pay somebody else. It's not that I don't want to pay. It's that I would prefer the book to be in my voice, audio, if possible, but we'll see.
I think most people would prefer to hear the author reading the book.
Right. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of famous
I'd offer to do it for you, but
I'm gonna see if I can get Morgan Freeman. If I get Morgan Freeman,
absolutely.
Hey, okay.
You know what?
Before I get God, I'm gonna get God to read my book.
That would be perfect.
About not believing in God. That's great.
In your book, Candace, you do a dive into not just necessarily by faith denomination or not, but also how the different cultures adapt to death and how they face death. You do a dive into that?
No, I strict, like I said, it's a very practical book. It's like part personal journal, because I get into like really graphic detail about my grief and how ugly it was and how hard it was. So it's like part journal. You get a very intimate look into my process, and then the rest of it is just really practical. It's like because when I was thinking about myself and my own grief, I wouldn't have been able to sit down and read a 300-page book and go through all of this history and all of this, that, and the third. Like, I'm not even interested in that. I just want to feel better. And so the idea behind the book is really like, you should just be able to run your finger, open the book through on any page, put a finger down, and find something that you can do today to help with that process. So it's very practical. I don't really, like I said, the research that I do talk about is to sort of bolster the points that I'm making, but I don't go into it's directly speaking towards non-believers, and it's directly speaking towards the difficulty of grieving, especially for non-believers and things they can do. So it's not complicated at all. It's very easy read.
Perfect. Is there without necessarily, you don't have to answer that question if you don't want to, but if you don't mind me asking, which part of your grieving process did you find most difficult to overcome?
Oh, the most difficult part.
It's not coming on the show, of course.
Yeah. Right. I don't know. I think just I had a lot of regret. And I think that was maybe trying to exercise all that regret and let stuff go and forgive myself and forgive him and, let a lot of things go. I think that was probably one of my biggest issues, because, he was 41, and I was 39. Like, we got a whole lot of life left to live, so there was a whole lot of regret and anger. I went through quite an intense bout of anger at him because he was driving. They determined that he didn't have his seatbelt on, and that was an ongoing argument between us. Was wear your freaking seatbelt, please. Yeah. And so for that to be, the thing that did him in, I had a lot of anger towards him for that I had to process and get through. So it was really ugly. It was really, I wouldn't wish it on an enemy. It was horrible. And now, that just to be extra transparent with you, right now I'm out and I'm talking on the book and I'm giving talks and I'm doing presentations and I'm going to conferences and retreats and stuff and talking about death and talking about my book and retelling my story over and over again. And it's nice because I know that this is part of the thing that I'm doing to honor him, but it's difficult because it's bringing up all of that old shit again. And so I'm kind of, going through a little moment, right now, not in this very moment, but at this time in my life while I'm trying to promote the book, some of that grief is coming back. So it's like, ugh.
So it looks like you've got a memorial tattoo on there. Is that part of your?
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely.
I know. It's
I can't tell which.
Right.
Yeah. His initials and his birthday and death date. Yeah. And
a
cliche heart with an infinity symbol. Super cliche.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And then he used to call me Hiker Girl, and so I got Hiker Girl tattooed on my legs.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So is that something that was part of your healing and helping with dealing with your grief, or?
Yeah, I definitely think it's like, okay. It's like, why do I not know what arm my tattoo is on? First of all, why is this camera confusing me? I should know the tattoo is over here.
I do the same thing. It's okay.
But there's some catharsis, I think, in to be okay. I got tons of tattoos, and I'm just that person that likes the pain. So there was some catharsis in actually having channeling the emotional pain into physical pain, but into art, and not just harming myself. So I think that helped me. And then just writing the book, I mean, like I said, I was really able to process a lot of stuff and really work through stuff and cry through stuff, and I was having to put my advice to work for my own self too. So having something to channel that energy into just made a huge difference.
Hey, I have a quick question, because I actually am sort of going through something similar to this. Is like the like you were saying, like having a bad, like things that you got in fights with or something like that about with somebody, and then they passed away a couple months ago. My father passed away, and like one of the last things we did, we had like a sort of like a debate, like almost about like religion and the Illuminati apparently and all this other stuff. And and that's been sort of a tough thing, like moving past that, those disagreements and things that you said. And I even made a video like right after we had the conversation of how I messed up, how I didn't do the debate the way I should have done it and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have any specific things that you could that would be helpful for people going through that maybe felt like they made a mistake with the person, and now they can't rectify it,
Okay, so the counselor in me comes out at that with that type of question, because we do therapeutic techniques, stuff as simple as journaling, right? There's stuff like Gestalt theory and the empty chair. I don't know if you ever heard of the empty chair, but it's like where let's say I'm the client and I'm sitting in a chair, and literally there's an empty chair across from me, and I decide I'm talking to whatever it is. I can say I'm going to have a conversation with my anger. I'm going to have a conversation with myself. I'm going to have a conversation with my mama, whatever I want to be in that other chair. And I talk in the book about the, like if it's helpful, if it feels good to just like talk to the person, I know in my mind they're not here, but it's similar to journaling. It's similar to getting those thoughts and those feelings out, empty chair techniques, stuff like that. I think there's something cathartic about just being able to say the things that you're thinking. So that's one thing, honestly, that I talk about is if you feel so inclined to sit there and have a audible conversation, have an audible conversation. If you rather journal it, same difference, right? So that's something that I talk about. And then I also, like I said, stuff like, redirecting your own attention. You gotta, sometimes we gotta redirect ourselves and say, okay, I'm feeling a lot of regret and guilt right now, and I know there's nothing I can do about this regret and guilt. Let me distract myself with something else, and of course that seems kind of obvious, right? Like engage in cliche things. I mean, engage in something to a distraction method. But if you're very intentional about it, I think there's intentionality behind it that makes a difference too. That says, I'm acknowledging that I'm going through a lot of grief right now. This anger that I'm feeling, or this regret, or this guilt that I'm feeling is related to the grief. I'm not going to let this tear me up, and I'm going to go and redirect myself. So there's a lot about in the book about being very intentional with your grief process, and being able to manage it and control it in that way when you when you take control of the grief, when you take control of the process, because the grief is going to do what the grief is going to do, but you can still take control of yourself and your decisions and how you're going to engage with yourself and other people in the world while you're grieving. You make conscious choices about how you're going to engage and do something different to sort of pull yourself out of those times when we get lost in our heads and get stuck. And
Oh yeah. Wow. Okay. Cool.
So kind of just like
Yeah.
intentionally processing your feelings, because I found personally that if I try to hold the feelings or whatever, like when you have feelings, you have to feel them. You have to let yourself feel them, or they're just going to keep troubling you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you gotta. I mean, it's not gonna go anywhere. It's the grief is not gonna go anywhere. So you might as well deal with it head on.
Yeah. And with the empty chair thing, I want to say real quick, it's almost like, you know how they say like your brain can't tell the difference between things a lot, you know, like, I mean, you can tell the difference, but like when you go through the motions of like talking to the person and rectifying the mistakes that you've made, your brain it can't really tell those emotional differences, you know, because it's a different part of the brain, right? So like, you know, that I could see how that'd be very, very helpful. So yeah.
Yeah, the other cool thing about the empty chair technique, I mean, obviously, you know, this is something that I'm supposed to say, you know, you want to do this with a licensed professional who help guide you through the process, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But the other thing, you know, if you, like I said, if you want to say you're going to do it in journal style, you're going to write it down. One thing that you would do is, okay, so I'm in my chair and I'm talking to my regret. Well, then I may literally get up, go sit in the other chair and become the voice of the regret. Now, what would the regret say to me? You know, and have a conversation in reverse of, like I said, if it was the person, you know, let's say it was my high school sweetheart, I'm talking to him. Then I get up and I go get in the other chair and I pretend that I'm him and talking back to Candace. You know, what would he say about the things that I've said? You know, and so sort of processing through it in a different type of unique way. And like I said, you could do that journal style as well, you know, and say, you know, what I wish this person had said to me before they died is XYZ, you know, or what I wish, you know, we could have said to each other is, you know, so processing it from both angles.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's super cool.
Fantastic. Candace, thank you so much for coming on the show and explaining your book to us. Really, really appreciate that. Before our listeners, if they want to find your book, where can they find it? I mean, it's not quite out now, but when it does come out, where can they find it?
So it's at all the major book retailers. You can get it from Amazon. They got it Barnes and Nobles, Borders. You can pre-order them right now. On as far as I know, you can pre-order them on all of those sites. And then that's it for the book right now. I'm on Twitter at Ebony Exodus, and Ebony Exodus has a page on Facebook, Ebony Exodus. So those will be the places to be able, if you want to reach out to me directly about the book or something like that, you could find me on Twitter and the Facebook page.
Perfect. Ebony Exodus. We'll look it up right now.
Yeah, I was just about to send you.
It's called the Ebony Exodus. Oh, well, you're talking about the Facebook page.
Oh, actually,
I was on Twitter. Yeah.
Now you're being followed.
That's right.
Sounds kind of creepy when I say it.
You following me? Don't follow me, Kevin, please.
Where do you like to go hiking again, Candace?
Where do you get high on the mountain? Candace, thank you so much for being on the show with us. Before
Thank you for having me.
I gotta have you say, hi, this is Candace Gorham. I took a left in the valley.
I took a left in the valley?
At the valley.
At the valley. Hi, this is Candace Gorham. I took a left at the valley.
Fantastic. Excellent.
Was that right?
Yeah, one of the better ones.